David, a 42-year-old successful lawyer, had spent years meticulously building his career in Austin, Texas. He was known for his work ethic, his dedication to his clients, and his unwavering commitment to upholding the law. His reputation in the legal world was flawless, and he had earned the respect of his colleagues. But it wasn't just his professional life that was thriving. His personal life seemed just as perfect. Married to Anna, a 40-year-old art gallery owner, he had what many would consider a dream life. Anna, a creative and business-savvy woman, managed her gallery with passion and care, while also playing the role of a loving mother to their two children, Lucas, 10, and Lily, 7. Their life together had been one of comfort and routine. The family had grown accustomed to spending their weekends at exclusive resorts, dining at five-star restaurants, and attending social events that were both glamorous and prestigious. The kids were happy, their needs were met, and the family often felt like they were living in a world of luxury and security. From the outside looking in, it seemed like they had it all. No one could have guessed the tension building beneath the surface. David had always been a workaholic, and despite his success, he felt the pressure of his career weighing on him more than ever. But he believed it was all worth it. After all, the sacrifices he made allowed his family to live in a way that most people could only dream of. His relationship with Anna had always been strong. They supported each other in their individual pursuits while keeping their family at the center of their lives. David admired Anna for her drive and the way she balanced her career and motherhood with grace. They were a team, partners in both life and business. However, as the years passed, there was something unspoken between them. David had noticed that Anna seemed to be growing increasingly distant, but he attributed it to the stress of managing her gallery and caring for their children. He didn't think much of it. After all, the demands of life often caused people to retreat into themselves. Still, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. One Saturday morning, as the sun streamed through the office windows and David sifted through a pile of legal papers, Anna called him. She was supposed to be meeting a client at the gallery, but she mentioned that she would be home early. David didn't think anything of it. He was wrapped up in his work. It wasn't until he went outside to grab the morning paper that his perfect life began to unravel. As he stepped out the door, he saw Anna's car pull into the driveway. She got out, and in an instant her handbag slipped from her shoulder, falling to the ground. The contents spilled out in a disorganized mess across the driveway. David, curious but not yet suspicious, walked over to help her gather her things. He bent down to pick up a few items, but then his hand froze. A small box caught his eye, its familiar packaging unmistakable. A box of emergency contraception pills. David's heart skipped a beat. He stood there for a moment, staring at the box in his hand, his mind racing. His first thought was a logical one. Perhaps Anna had just forgotten to remove it from her bag. But then another thought hit him, one he couldn't ignore. Why would she have it? And why would it be in plain sight like this? He looked up at Anna, who had just walked around to the other side of the car, oblivious to the discovery he'd just made. His stomach churned with an uncomfortable sense of dread. As he stood there holding the box, he felt the weight of the moment settle on him. This wasn't a simple mistake or a minor oversight. Something was wrong, and David knew deep down that it wasn't just the contents of Anna's bag that were spilling out. They were both about to confront something much deeper. Anna turned toward him, her face lit up with a smile that quickly faltered when she saw the expression on David's face. His usual calm demeanor had vanished, replaced by an unreadable look that made her uneasy. As he walked toward her with the box still in his hand, his pulse quickened. This moment felt like the calm before the storm. "David, what's wrong?" Anna asked, her voice laced with confusion, but there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes as she saw the box. Her smile faded, replaced by a look of guilt. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. David's voice was steady but edged with a tension he couldn't hide. "Anna, what's this?" he asked, holding up the box. Anna's face drained of color as she quickly realized that the truth had been revealed. She hesitated, her eyes avoiding his, knowing there was no escaping the confrontation that was about to unfold. She took a deep breath, and in that moment, David's heart sank. With a heavy sigh, Anna finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "David, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago." She took a step closer, her eyes searching his for a sign of understanding or forgiveness, but she saw only the beginning of the heartbreak that would soon follow. David's mind was spinning. He knew that whatever she was about to say, it would shatter everything they had built together. And deep down, he feared he might not be able to put the pieces back together. He braced himself for the worst, knowing that once the truth was out, there would be no going back. The air between them was thick with tension. David stood frozen, his mind racing, the box of pills still clutched in his hand. His body felt heavy, weighed down by the sudden rush of realization. He had been living in a world of comfort, of seemingly perfect happiness, but now, it all felt like a house of cards ready to collapse. Anna shifted nervously from one foot to the other, her gaze never meeting David's. She knew that there was no easy way to explain what had happened, but it was time. There was no more hiding, no more pretending that everything was fine. Her hands trembled as she reached for the door handle of the car, unsure of how to begin the conversation she had been dreading. "David, I never meant for this to happen," she began, her voice shaky. "I don't know how to explain myself, but I owe you the truth." David's heart was pounding in his chest as he took a slow step forward, trying to control the anger and confusion that was building inside of him. His eyes were locked on her face, desperate for some sort of clarity, some sort of explanation, but all he could see was the woman he thought he knew, the woman he trusted, now standing before him, broken and guilty. "I've been seeing someone," Anna continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. "James. He's a businessman I've worked with for the last few months. It started as a friendship, but it turned into something more. Something I never planned." She paused, her eyes welling up with tears. "I never wanted to hurt you, David. I didn't mean for it to go this far." David felt a cold wave wash over him, the sting of betrayal settling deep in his chest. His mind couldn't fully comprehend what he was hearing. Anna had been seeing someone else, and not just anyone. Someone she worked with, someone close to her world. The depth of the deception was overwhelming. "So, this has been going on for how long?" David asked, his voice tight, almost unrecognizable. The words came out like a dagger, cutting through the silence. "2 months, Anna answered softly, barely above a whisper. "It's been a mistake from the beginning, but I got caught up in it. I was unhappy, David. Not with you, but with everything. The pressure, the expectations, the constant juggling of work and family. I felt like I was losing myself, and James, he made me feel seen, heard." Her voice cracked and she took a shaky breath. "I know I betrayed you and I regret it. But I've been trying to figure out how to make things right." David took a step back, the reality of Anna's confession hitting him like a freight train. He felt like the ground beneath him had shifted, like everything he had believed in had been ripped away in an instant. The woman he trusted, the woman he had built a life with, had betrayed him. And now, standing before him, she was pleading for forgiveness, for a chance to make things right. But David couldn't shake the feeling of utter devastation. Anna had made a choice, and in doing so, she had shattered the foundation of their marriage. "You're asking me to forgive you?" David's voice was low, almost incredulous. "You think a few words, a few tears, are enough to undo this? To undo what you've done?" Anna's face fell and she nodded, the guilt and regret etched across her features. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, David," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm just asking for the chance to explain, to show you that I'm sorry. I know I can't erase what happened, but I want to try to make it up to you. Please, David, I never meant for this to destroy us." David looked at her for a long moment, his mind swirling with emotions he couldn't quite process. Anger, hurt, disbelief, all of it was overwhelming. He wanted to scream, to lash out at her for everything she had taken from him, but instead he felt a deep, aching emptiness inside. "You don't get it, do you, Anna?" David finally said, his voice colder now, more distant. "This isn't just about a mistake. This is about trust, about the fact that everything I thought I knew about you, about us, was a lie. How do you expect me to just move past that? To just forgive you?" Anna stood silently, tears streaming down her face, unable to answer him. The weight of her actions was too great for words, and she knew deep down that David's pain was something only time could heal. But she was willing to do whatever it took, even if that meant losing him forever. David took a deep breath, his hands clenched into fists. "I don't know what to say right now," he muttered. "I need time. I need space to think about all of this. I can't just forgive you in an instant, Anna. Not after everything you've done." Anna nodded, her heart breaking at the finality in his words. "I understand," she whispered, the sorrow in her voice palpable. "I'll give you the space you need. I just hope that someday you'll see that I truly am sorry for what I've done." David turned away from her, his mind still reeling. He couldn't look at her any longer, not now, not with everything she had just confessed. The damage had been done, and the path ahead seemed uncertain. As he walked away, Anna stood there, her heart heavy with regret, knowing that the life they had once shared was slipping through her fingers, piece by piece. The days following the confrontation were a blur for David. The once warm, familiar home he shared with Anna now felt like a cold, foreign place. Every corner seemed to whisper reminders of what had been, of the life he had built with her, and of the trust that had now been shattered beyond repair. He found it hard to focus at work, his mind constantly drifting back to the conversation that had turned his world upside down. David's friends and colleagues noticed the change in him. He was more withdrawn, quieter than usual, and spent most of his time buried in his work or alone in his office. He barely spoke to Anna, and when he did, the conversation was minimal, terse, and devoid of the affection that had once defined their relationship. Anna, on the other hand, was desperate to fix things, but she had no idea where to begin. She had tried to approach David, to explain herself further, to offer apologies, but he always shut her down. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this felt different. She couldn't fix what had been broken. She couldn't undo the hurt she had caused. Still, she couldn't help but hope that David would eventually forgive her, that he would find it in his heart to let her prove that she was truly sorry. One evening, after another tense day where David had barely spoken to her, Anna decided to make one last attempt. She knew that if they were going to have any chance of salvaging their marriage, it had to start with her being completely honest. No more hiding behind explanations or justifications. She had to show David that she understood the gravity of her actions. She found David in the living room, sitting on the couch, his eyes fixed on the television, though he wasn't really watching it. His face was worn, his eyes tired, and there was a heaviness to him that she hadn't seen before. He looked like a man who had been carrying a burden for far too long. "David," Anna said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. David didn't look at her. He didn't even flinch. He just sat there, his hands resting on his lap. "David, please? I need to talk to you," Anna continued, taking a step closer. She had been avoiding this moment, but she knew it was time. "I know I've already said this, but I need you to understand that I'm truly, deeply sorry for what I did. I can't undo it. I know that. But I need you to know that I regret it every single day." David didn't respond at first, but after a long silence he finally spoke. "You regret it? Anna, you don't get it. You don't get what you've done. You've betrayed me. You've broken my trust, and I can't just go back to the way things were. I don't even know who you are anymore." The words hit Anna like a slap to the face. She had hoped that somehow she could reach him, but the pain in David's voice made it clear that all the apologies in the world couldn't erase the damage she had caused. "David, please," Anna begged, her eyes welling up with tears. "I've been so lost. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. I want to show you that I can change, that I can be the woman you believed in. I love you, David. I always have. I made a horrible mistake and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." David stood up, his face hardening. "I'm not sure you can fix this, Anna," he said, his voice strained with emotion. "And I'm not sure I want you to. How do I move past this? How do I move past the fact that you chose someone else over me? That you betrayed me like this?" Anna's heart sank as she watched David, the man she once thought she knew so well, now a stranger. The raw pain in his eyes was enough to make her feel the weight of her guilt all over again. She had never imagined that the man she had married, the man she had promised to love and cherish, could look at her with such hurt and resentment. "I know I've destroyed everything," Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. "But please, David, don't give up on me yet. Don't give up on us." David's eyes softened for just a moment, but then the hardness returned. He shook his head, his voice trembling. "I don't know if I can keep going like this, Anna. I don't know if I can trust you again. The woman I married, she's gone. And I don't know if I can find it in myself to love her again." The words felt like a final blow, a death sentence to the marriage they had built. Anna felt as though the ground had been ripped out from under her. She had hoped, even if it was just a small part of her, that David might be able to find forgiveness in his heart. But now it seemed that hope was fading fast. As Anna stood there watching David walk away, she knew that things would never be the same. The damage had been done and no amount of apologies could take it back. Her mind raced, torn between the love she still felt for him and the guilt that would haunt her forever. David walked out of the room without another word, leaving Anna standing alone in the living room. The silence that followed was deafening, and for the first time, Anna realized just how far gone they truly were. The days that followed the heart-wrenching conversation felt like a slow and painful unraveling. David became more distant, and Anna was left to grapple with the reality of what she had done. She spent hours pacing the house, thinking of how she could have been so careless with the trust and love that David had given her. The guilt weighed heavily on her, but it wasn't just guilt that kept her awake at night, it was the fear that she had lost everything, that she had lost him forever. David, too, was struggling. He couldn't shake the image of Anna standing there, begging him for forgiveness, And yet, even as her words hung in the air, he couldn't bring himself to accept them. Every time he looked at her, all he saw was the betrayal. It consumed him. He couldn't remember what it felt like to trust her anymore, couldn't remember what it felt like to feel safe in their marriage. The woman he thought he knew was gone, replaced by someone whose actions had left him shattered. But the hardest part was knowing that there were children involved. Lucas and Lily were the only source of joy in his life now, and they had already seen the tension between their parents. David knew they deserved better, that they deserved to grow up in a home where love and trust were the foundation, not the cracks that had been created by Anna's affair. The thought of their pain was the only thing that made him hesitate. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he couldn't live in a relationship built on lies. Anna, on the other hand, had come to a painful realization of her own. She had thought that time would heal the wound she had caused, but she knew that David was already too far gone. She could see it in his eyes every time they spoke. He was done. He had made up his mind. And though it broke her heart, she knew she couldn't force him to forgive her. All she could do now was try to move forward, even if that meant doing it without him. It was one late evening when David finally made the decision. He had been sitting alone in the study, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the family photos on the wall. He saw the pictures of their wedding, the vacations they had taken together, and the moments of happiness they had shared as a family. Those moments felt like a lifetime ago. He wondered if he had been blind to the cracks in their marriage or if they had always been there, hidden beneath the surface. But no amount of reminiscing could change what had happened. He stood up abruptly, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He walked into the living room where Anna was sitting, her face tired and drawn from the sleepless nights she had spent wondering what would happen next. "Anna, we need to talk," David said, his voice firm but hollow. Anna looked up at him, her heart racing. She had been waiting for this moment, but she wasn't prepared for what was to come. She nodded, her hands shaking slightly as she wiped away the tears that had been gathering at the corners of her eyes. "I've made my decision," David continued, his gaze steady. "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living like this, pretending that everything is fine. I don't trust you, Anna. I don't think I ever will again." Anna's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment she couldn't speak. The words felt like a dagger to her heart. She had known this was coming, but hearing it out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. She had hoped, no, she had prayed, that somehow, some way David would find it in his heart to forgive her. But she knew deep down that it wasn't going to happen. "I understand," she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. "I know I've destroyed everything. I'm sorry, David. I am so sorry." David's face softened, but there was no relief in his expression. "I know you are, but it doesn't change anything. The damage is done. You've made your choice and I've made mine." Anna stood up slowly, her legs feeling weak beneath her. She took a step toward him but stopped herself. She wanted to beg him to stay, to tell him that she could change, that she could make things right. But she knew that the time for pleading was over. "David, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I love you. I don't want to lose you." But David was resolute. "I know you do. But love isn't enough anymore. Not after what you've done. I have to think about the kids. They deserve better than this, than us." He paused, swallowing hard. "I'm going to file for divorce." The finality of his words hit Anna like a thunderclap. Her heart shattered all over again, but this time, there was no chance of picking up the pieces. She had lost him. She had lost everything. David turned to leave, but before he walked away he said one last thing. "I'm filing for full custody of the kids. I can't let them grow up in this environment." Anna's world crumbled around her. She knew deep down that she had no one to blame but herself. She had made a mistake that had cost her everything. The love of her life, her family, her children. David left the room and Anna sank into the couch, her body shaking with sobs. She had hoped for reconciliation, but now she had nothing. The life they had built, the future they had planned, was slipping through her fingers like sand. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. Her life as she had known it was over. The days that followed David's decision felt like a slow, relentless march through grief. Anna was left alone in their once shared home, the silence now a constant companion, heavy and suffocating. She had tried to call David a few times, but each time he didn't answer. She knew he needed space, but it didn't make the hurt any easier to bear. The house, once filled with laughter and life, now seemed empty, an echo of the life she had lost. David, for his part, kept his focus on the kids. Lucas and Lily were his priority now. He made sure they had everything they needed, from their school supplies to the comfort of their favorite activities. Every evening after work he would sit with them, helping with homework or simply spending time talking about their day. The bond between them grew stronger as David realized how much he had missed out on during his years of focused work. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of peace when he was with his children. But peace did not come easily for David. His heart still ached for what could have been for the family they had once been. The divorce process was inevitable, and though David had been clear in his decision to pursue full custody of the kids, the emotional toll it took on him was exhausting. Each step, each legal document signed felt like a further separation from Anna, and yet, in a strange way, it also felt like a liberation. He had chosen to put himself and his children first, and it was the hardest but most necessary thing he had ever done. Anna, meanwhile, struggled to find her footing. The divorce proceedings moved forward quickly, and David's decision to pursue custody was set in stone. It wasn't that Anna didn't want to fight for her children, she just wasn't sure she could anymore. She had lost David's trust. And with the loss of his trust came the loss of their marriage, the loss of the dreams they had built together. Her gallery, once a vibrant and thriving space, now felt like a reminder of the woman she had been before everything fell apart. She had thrown herself into her work for years, but now, without the support of her family, she was left feeling like an outsider in her own life. The days blurred together, and despite her best efforts, she found herself sinking deeper into isolation. Friends from her social circles reached out, but their concern was only a small comfort. None of them truly understood the depth of her pain. She had lost everything she cared about, her family, her marriage, her sense of purpose. One evening, after a particularly lonely day, Anna decided to take a walk to clear her head. She had always found solace in the quiet streets of Austin, where she could think, reflect, and try to make sense of her life. As she walked through the neighborhood, she passed a small park where families gathered, laughing and playing together. It was a scene that used to bring her joy, but now, it only reminded her of what she had lost. Sitting on a bench, she allowed herself to cry. The tears came in waves, uncontrollable, as the full weight of her actions finally hit her. She thought of Lucas and Lily, how they had been caught in the middle of all this. She thought of David, how he had always been there for her, even when she took him for granted. And she thought of herself, who had she become? Was this the person she wanted to be? But as the sun began to set and the park emptied out, Anna felt something shift inside of her. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She couldn't change the past, but she could begin to rebuild her future. The road ahead would be long and difficult, and she would have to face the consequences of her actions. But for the first time in a while, she felt a glimmer of hope. Back at home, David was tucking Lucas and Lily into bed. He kissed each of them goodnight, his heart full of love for the two people who mattered most. As he turned off the lights and closed the door behind him, he stood in the hallway for a moment, taking in the quiet. His life had changed so drastically over the past few months, and yet, in many ways, it felt like he was finally beginning to live for himself and his children. But even as he found solace in the quiet moments with his kids, he couldn't help but think of Anna. He wondered if she was okay, if she had found a way to cope with the aftermath of their marriage. He knew he couldn't fix things with her, not now, not after everything that had happened, but part of him still wanted to know that she was going to be all right. The thought lingered with him as he made his way to the kitchen for a late-night cup of coffee. A few weeks passed, and David found himself more settled in his new routine. He was balancing work and family better than ever before, but the silence of his home without Anna was still something he struggled to accept. The memories of their life together, the good times, the laughter, the small moments, were still there, lingering in the corners of his mind. And yet, despite everything, David knew that he had made the right choice. His children were his priority, and they needed him to be strong. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in months he felt like he was moving forward. As for Anna, she too was taking steps forward, however small. She had started therapy, seeking a way to understand the choices she had made, to understand why she had hurt David and what it would take to forgive herself. She had a long road ahead of her, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of determination. The past couldn't be undone, but she could work on becoming a better version of herself for her own sake and for the sake of her children. Time passed, and with it, life began to shift in ways David and Anna hadn't anticipated. While they had both taken their own paths, it became clear that the impact of their broken marriage still loomed over them, influencing every decision they made. But for the first time since the separation, both began to see a glimmer of hope in their futures. For David, the focus on his children had been an anchor in the storm. He had grown closer to Lucas and Lily, rediscovering the joy of being a father without the distractions that had once pulled him away. He had taken them to the park on weekends, spent long evenings watching movies together, and had even started cooking their meals, a small but significant step in reconnecting with them. Their laughter filled the house again, and in those moments, David felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. But there were still moments of doubt. David found himself questioning whether his decision to end the marriage had been the right one. Could things have been salvaged if Anna had been more open with him? Could he have forgiven her and moved forward together? Those thoughts crept in during quiet moments, when the house was still, when he lay awake at night, but they were fleeting. In his heart, he knew the decision had been necessary, and for the sake of his children, it was the only way forward. Anna, too, had found some semblance of peace. She had focused on rebuilding herself, both personally and professionally. The gallery, though it had suffered in the aftermath of her affair, began to thrive again. She threw herself into her work with the passion and dedication that had once made her successful, and she found comfort in her art, in the expression it allowed her to channel. She had also continued her therapy, working through the guilt and pain of her past actions. It wasn't easy. Each session uncovered more layers of her own unresolved issues, but slowly she began to understand why she had made the choices she did, why she had allowed herself to fall into a relationship that ultimately destroyed her family. It was a long and difficult journey, but it was one that she knew she had to take. She had come to terms with the fact that she couldn't change the past, but she could change her future. And that was the first step toward healing. One chilly evening as the sun set over Austin, David stood in his kitchen, preparing a simple dinner for himself and the kids. He had started to enjoy these quiet moments in the kitchen, finding solace in the rhythm of chopping vegetables and stirring sauces. It was a stark contrast to the chaotic, tension-filled days of the past few months. As he set the table, he realized how far he had come, how much he had changed since the divorce. He was more focused, more present. And for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of fulfillment that didn't rely on his career or his relationship with Anna. Just as he was finishing up, his phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Anna. "David, I know it's been a while, but I wanted to reach out. I've been working on myself and I hope you and the kids are doing well. If you're open to it, I'd like to talk soon. No pressure, just when you're ready." David stared at the message for a few moments, unsure of how to respond. He hadn't spoken to Anna in weeks, and though their communication had been minimal, he had started to feel a quiet shift in his heart. He had never wanted to close the door entirely on her. But after everything, was he ready to reopen that door? He sat down at the table, taking a deep breath. His children were still in their rooms, finishing their homework. The silence in the house felt different now, calmer but also more fragile. He had moved on in many ways, but the emotional scars remained. As he typed his response, his fingers hovered over the screen. "I'm willing to talk, Anna. Let's figure out a time." He hit send and set the phone down. It was a small step, but it felt significant. David knew that reconnecting with Anna would never be easy. There was too much hurt, too much betrayal, too much to work through. But he also knew that life was about moving forward, about growth, about healing, and sometimes that meant allowing space for old wounds to be acknowledged before they could fully heal. A few days later, David and Anna met at a cafe in the heart of Austin. It was a neutral place, somewhere neither of them had been before. David arrived first, sitting at a corner table near the window, where he could watch the people passing by. His nerves were on edge, but he knew this was a necessary conversation, one that could either bring closure or open the door to a new kind of relationship. Anna arrived shortly after, her eyes meeting his with a mix of apprehension and hope. She sat down across from him, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of everything that had transpired between them hung in the air, thick and undeniable. But David knew that this conversation, however difficult, was their opportunity to start fresh, if only as co-parents, if nothing else. "David," Anna began, her voice soft but steady, "I just want to say again how sorry I am for everything. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I need you to know that I've changed. I've worked hard to become a better person, not just for myself but for the kids too." David looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I've seen the changes, Anna. I know you're trying. But it's not about what happened anymore, it's about what we do next. For our kids. For ourselves." Anna nodded, tears threatening to spill over. "I know. I want to make things right, David. I want us to move forward, whatever that looks like." They sat in silence for a while, each of them processing the weight of the conversation. David felt a sense of peace, knowing that he had made the right decision. He wasn't sure where their future would take them, or if they could ever truly rebuild what they once had. But he knew that for the sake of their children, and for their own growth, They had to at least try. As they finished their coffee and stood up to leave, David felt a sense of quiet resolve. The journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was ready to face it.